Good evening, friends. Welcome to the India Power Talk. As you know, India Power Talk is an initiative wherein we invite international thought leaders and domain experts to create an easily accessible digital reservoir of their insights, experiences, and strategies on the economy. This is meant to benefit not just Indian entrepreneurs and policymakers, but also international businesses, investors, and strategic partners who have invested or are intent to invest in India. We would be inviting entrepreneurs, economists, professors, investment bankers, inventors, scientists, lawyers, chartered accountants, and other senior professionals with experience in diverse sectors who could contribute on the subject. Today, I am going to focus on business between UK and India and the opportunities in the near future. The bilateral trade between India and UK stood at 15.5 billion in 2019-20, as against 16.87 billion in the earlier year. UK industries have long investments in India across sectors, and leading business associations, investors, policymakers, and Indian entrepreneurs in Britain see this as an exciting time for the India-UK trade and economic partnership, particularly in the areas of infrastructure, education, technology, and healthcare, including engaging with the India's ambitions for urbanization, digitization, and skills development. Equally, in recent years, large number of Indian businesses have chosen London for their international expansion. Also, UK has always been one of the favorite destinations for Indian students. This augurs well for both India and UK, and I guess the best is yet to come. And to talk on the diverse opportunities and some of the challenges for business between UK and India, we have someone who has traveled almost 250 times in India, a highly successful entrepreneur, author, and business coach, Roy Newey. He has done some extraordinary work as a chairman of UK-India Business Council under the Joint Economic Trade Committee, JETCO. He has also worked as a chairman of the Commonwealth Skills Forum in India and other countries, which is also highly appreciated. Under this program, he brought together the government's training organizations, staff, and students to look at research, debate, design, and implement best practices in the areas of vocational skills. Recently, he stepped down as the chairman of International Advisory Board operating Oxford and other colleges. He served on the boards of more than 100 growth companies, consulted in 85 countries, advised ministers over 15 countries, and delivered keynote speeches in 75 countries. Let me welcome someone who has extensively worked on India-UK relations, Mr. Roy Newey, from London to the India Power Talk. Mr. Newey, during our discussions, you said you have visited India over 250 times. May I ask you to begin by telling us giving us an overview of your work during these visits and what truly really impressed you?
Great. Good morning, Nitin. It's great to be here. So I think when I first came to India, and I've got a story that I will tell later on in our meeting as to how that came about. Three things that jumped out at me. Number one, there was a really clear shared objective and vision as to what India wanted to do in respect of its skilling of the nation and particularly of its young people. So that's number one, a single clear shared vision. There was also a personal commitment from many of the political leaders, the business leaders, and also some real heroes that I met from the third sector who wanted to come together and put aside their differences and align against that single shared vision to skill India. And finally, there was an understanding and an appreciation and a dawning in people's minds about the energy that can be released in communities and young people when we give people the skills and the pathway to their careers and the ability to have financial success in their lives. That releasing of energy becomes quite contagious, and I was delighted to be part of that journey.
Mr. Newey, firstly, I must sincerely thank you for your really valuable time and efforts and the kind services that you have offered to my country. But let me ask you whether there was any disappointment to you?
The disappointment is, unfortunately, that because of the numbers involved in India, that more has not been achieved. And we have some great visions and some great targets, but in reality, we're still only scratching the surface of the issue. I also felt that it was sad for me that in many parts of India, there were some people who were left outside of that economic bubble. There were people who this skills agenda would still be unknown to them because it hadn't yet touched their lives or their families or their friends. And that's a sadness and a disappointment. And I think the final thing would be that employers still, and you'll recognize this being a lawyer, Nitin, that employers still get wrapped in the red tape and more red tape and more red tape and bureaucracy, and then some more red tape and some more red tape that actually prevent them from doing the thing which they want to naturally do, which is to provide skills for their staff. But the paraphernalia of government can sometimes smother that drive and that spirit.
You are very right. You were the chairman of UK-India Business Council, trade discussions under the Joint Economic Trade Committee, JETCO. I mean, could you tell us about the work that was done by JETCO and under your leadership in India?
So JETCO splits into a number of different themes, and the 5 years that I was the chairman of one of those streams was there was 4 streams, and I was responsible for chairing the education and skills initiatives. So that's the bringing together of the UK and India at every level of society. So the interconnection of government, the civil servants, which, as you know, are separate to government.
Yes.
The business leaders, the university leaders, the leaders of further education, and the leaders of the private sector. It was to bring all of those together and to better understand each other's needs, to understand the gaps and the opportunities, and to understand how we could work together in a cohesive way for the benefit of the people of India. So for in the UK, this is a journey that we'd been on for a number of years already. And so there were a number of developments and innovations that were sat on the shelves of UK skills providers. And they were entirely applicable when set in the recontextualization of India to be of benefit for India, and therefore shortening the learning curve, preventing the need for wheels to be reinvented. And this was a great opportunity for the UK to pass on that work that had already been done to partners in India who were just starting out on that journey. So lots of sharing of best practice, lots of study tours, lots of intercollaborations between universities and colleges, lots of private sector workers, and it was a great opportunity to collaborate and share the journey that we'd been on in the UK with India.
I see. So, given the background of the relation between UK and India, how do you really see the future business relationship, and what's the potential according to you?
Well, what a strange year 2020 is. We have obviously the COVID issue, which we're all wrestling with, and the ramifications in all areas of our lives that we're dealing with. But of course, here in the UK, we have an initial layer, and that is Brexit. That's the UK's decision to exit from its trading relationship with the largest trading partner in the world, Europe. And so that gives us lots of new opportunities. We had sleepwalked into a relationship with Europe, and therefore we've done away with tariffs and trade barriers and things. And now, of course, we're all back to square one, where we have to resurrect all the trade barriers, and we have to reinsert all the tariffs, and we have to negotiate all the different trade agreements from scratch. And of course, we've done it at a time of political heightened uncertainty. And so I think for the UK and for India, there's great opportunities as we exit that huge trading relationship we have for the UK to benefit from trade with India, for Indian companies and Indian investors and UK companies and UK investors to sit down and work out what's the new opportunities that we've got here for the UK and India to work together. And I'm excited about how those new relationships can be built and taken forward with more vigor, because how can I say this in a politically correct way? We're leaving Europe not on the greatest of terms. And so I suspect they will expect us to pay a price for our exit and our decision to leave them. And therefore we'll be delighted to establish new friendships around the world. And obviously we've had a very strong friendship with India. And I'm looking forward to those friendships leading to trade for benefit for both sides. I think, and finally, Nitin, one thing that is increasingly impacting on our world, we see it here today with ourselves, is the use of digitization. To give it a brand Zoom, the world of Zoom. I no longer need to go to Manchester to travel to Heathrow to come arrive in Delhi, transfer. Now I can pick up a Zoom call with Nitin, and we can have this conversation. And so trade and deals and the effectiveness and the swiftness in which they can be done with the electronic and digital aids can be much faster. And I think that's going to impact on our world.
According to you, what are the sectors where we really could collaborate more or do more business?
I suppose it's easier for me to identify those sectors where we won't be able to affect. In my time in India, obviously I was focused on education and skills. Mm-hmm. That took me into engineering, light engineering and heavy engineering, agriculture. I think agriculture is a huge opportunity for the UK to purchase goods from India that will really bring alive some of those rural areas of India. I was involved in some innovative agricultural methods near to the airport, so goods could be shipped out. Mm-hmm. But obviously your love of whiskey gives us an opportunity. Building, construction, we've got the issue with lawyers and legal financial services. So I think there are lots and lots of opportunities. It's hard to think of areas where we won't be aligned.
I see. Great. We have a lot of SMEs and MSMEs in India, a lot of startups in India. In fact, the SME and the MSME is the largest provider of employment in India. But they struggle, they lack technology, they lack innovation, they lack capital. What would be your advice to these small entrepreneurs in India? I mean, is there an opportunity for them to come and collaborate with multiple ventures in UK or for that matter in any European country?
Well, one of the things that I think is an opportunity in the future, a small practical idea, is that you and I have been able to collaborate today using Zoom. It costs virtually nothing to be able to collaborate using Zoom. And an awful lot can be achieved in the less than an hour that we've been speaking today. I think there's a whole raft of UK employers who have been on their own journey of development who would really relish and love the opportunity to mentor SMEs free of charge in India.
Okay.
And maybe it's just an hour a month. And maybe it's a short phone call like this where each side could collaborate and could exchange ideas and information in a completely non-competitive way. But I sense as those relationships have developed and as people learn to like each other and the trust develops, then trade will flow between the two countries because we put both sides together. And my whole life has been dedicated to putting two sides together opposite a table and brokering a relationship that builds trust. And on trust, we can build trade.
That's a very practical insight and a practical strategy and suggestion. And I really appreciate Mr. Newey on that. So let's move to skills development by the Commonwealth program under your leadership again. And could you elaborate, because that's very critical work and that's a very, very heavy work that you have done. So could you explain or could you elaborate on the work that was done under the Commonwealth program?
Yes. So I think that the issue with the Commonwealth is there are 56 countries in the Commonwealth. From the size of India, obviously the largest country in the Commonwealth, to tiny islands in the Caribbean, populations of merely a couple of thousand. And so again, the UK had tended to first foot many of those development needs within vocational skills area as we addressed our own issues and agenda and the problems that we had with young people and people no longer having the skills and capability to do the artisan work that was necessary to have a thriving economy. And so I think one of the things that we did was we tried to calibrate where on the journey was each of those 56 countries. And whoever was in front of this person, well, you're a great ally to be able to help this country. And actually don't feel bad about that because you've got great stuff here that you can help to train this country. And that the agenda of developing skills is common. the culture, the language, the currency, the religion, that they might all be different. Those are the various factors. But actually, the common threads of how do we get young people engaged and give them the skills that give them the confidence and self-esteem to be able to walk towards careers and look after themselves and their families, those themes are all similar and in all countries. And in fact, I would sometimes get picked up on my belief that there was a great similarity between Jamaica and India. People say, well, how on earth can there possibly be a similarity? But if you've got young people, young spirit, willing hands, a set of standards, a set of certifications, and a way to give them the confidence and competency to go to work and earn a living, contribute to their economy, they were similar. So my job was really to bring together the similarities of the Commonwealth and to ensure that best practice was served across all nations.
Any highlight of during your leadership of any of the program that you would like to share with us?
Well, I don't know quite how to say this, but Indians travel well, don't they?
Yes.
Indians travel, because of the population dividend that you have. There are Indians to be found all over the world. And so whenever I would land in a new country to start the development, whether it be in South Africa, for example, I would sit down in South Africa and I would start to do some work, or in the Middle East on behalf of the Commonwealth. And very quickly in the audience, a hand would go up and an Indian would make themselves, and they'd say, I met you once in Mumbai. So, right. We are a skills provider and we are here in South Africa, and my brother is back in India. So actually India travels very well, doesn't it?
Yes.
And you're taking your skills development around the world much better than the UK. And so it was those opportunities to meet and work with Indians in different countries, in different contexts, but on that shared agenda that excited me.
Great. Such a great commitment, Mr. Newey, to India. So may I ask you, what really motivated you to make such a big personal commitment to India's skill development or skill agenda?
So I had my business based in the UK, and I had my head office in Sheffield, and I was approached by a member of staff who worked in one of our call centres on a part-time basis, a gentleman called Siddharth Mishra. And Siddharth approached me and he said, sir, I'm from India and I'm studying here a PhD in the UK on peace studies. And I would really like to talk to you about the benefit of what you're doing to reduce poverty in the UK and to provide skills and vocational engagement of young people. I said, okay, great. So I had a meeting with him. And at the end of the meeting, he said, what I want to do is I want to take what you've got here and take it to India. So I said, Siddharth, I need to be really honest with you. We're just a small company and we are of limited funds. And my vision is vast as long as it only extends to the UK. But I really don't think I'm going to be taking this to India. So he talked to me for 2 years whilst he did his PhD. And at the end of his PhD, he said, I have some good news and some bad news. He said, the good news is I have met my wife. She is from San Francisco, and although she's Indian origin, she had been traveling to the UK to do her studies here. And I have met her and we've married. And I said, oh, that's lovely. He said, and the other good news is I have decided to put aside the first year of my married life for me to go back to India because I want to take your mission back to India. So I tried to douse him with a bucket of cold water and said, Siddharth, this isn't going to happen. I don't have the money to do this. I don't have the vision to do this. I've never been to India. He said, sir, I will go and I will find. Anyway, Siddharth Mishra went to India and Siddharth and I would speak every week. And Siddharth, he found opportunities for us and he engaged me initially to go. And I met with your political leaders and I met with business leaders and I fell in love. And I had a business in India and we employed, hundreds of staff and we trained hundreds of thousands of people. And it was a delight. So I have Siddharth Mishra to thank for my visit, a young part-time gentleman in our telecentre who has made a real difference in his life. And that was his mission. He wanted to make a difference in his life.
No, in fact, across the globe, you will find a lot of young and committed, young Indians who want to come back and want to commit to India and and this is done. They are doing just selflessly, honestly. And they have. I know for a fact there are a lot of people in the US, in Canada, in Japan, who have given up their very lucrative careers, and they have come back, and they have dedicated themselves to they have committed themselves to the next generation. I'm really thanks to people like Siddharth, and thanks to a person like you, who have really responded so well. So uh, uh, see, we have 1.3 billion population, and majority of which are young. By 2030, I guess we will be the youngest populated country. What do you think, should be our vision to shape the skill strategy of these young people? Because why I'm saying this, because there's always a gap between what is demand in the market versus what is being taught to the young population. So how do we really bridge up this gap, and what should be our vision to match that gap?
Okay. So my comments may be a little bit controversial, and I apologize for anybody that is upset by my forthrightness. But as you say, the demand and supply mechanisms in skills is always misaligned. The market changes very quickly. Customers' needs change. Science moves on. Employers' needs change. And so they suddenly have a huge surge in a demand for a particular type of worker. And yet the skills providers, well, it takes them 2 years to notice that the market's
Yes.
changed. Then it takes them 2 or 3 years to develop the training materials. Then it takes them 2 or 3 years to train the people to meet the market need. So they are 5 to 7 years behind, lagging what the actual need in the market is, which leads to great frustrations on behalf of the employers. It leads to great disappointment for the individuals of the trainees, because they train for 2 years with a skill, they spend their family's money, they get their qualification, and then they find there are no jobs for that skill because the market has moved on. And it means that there's people in the colleges and the universities and the private training providers are constantly getting battered by the employers that you are producing people that aren't relevant to the skills market.
Yes.
It's a dilemma. And in India, you've done some good stuff with the skills councils and with the National Skills Development Corporation. Dilip Chinoy, who I'm a great fan of, he's a really hardworking guy and has a real vision. He understands it and he gets it and he battles to get through it. But you've got to keep trying to bring these two together, and it's a constant journey.
Yes.
And one of the things that I did in the UK when I worked with the UK government was we actually said to the skills providers, we're going to pay you for the skills training that you're doing once this individual has secured a job using those skills in the jobs market and has been in that job for 12 months.
I see.
And so this meant instead of the skills provider being able to train people and get the cash off the government or off the individual there and then disperse them into a holding pen here to see if they could use those skills to get a job, or getting a skill but actually ending up working at McDonald's, which is not a bad job working at McDonald's. Working at McDonald's is fine. But if you've got a computer science qualification and you end up working on the counter service, you've not utilized the skills investment that you've made. So what we did was we said to the skills providers, we're going to give you a small amount of money to have the person, but the large payment will come 1 year down the line once you can demonstrate that that person has transferred into the labor market.
I see.
And had a job which is utilizing that skill. And in the UK, that led to a huge transformation, because of course these people get no money for 2 years. And these were billions and billions of pounds that we had to switch the investment, because otherwise we were just paying people to train people for jobs that didn't exist.
I see. Correct. One of the major challenges what education system in India is facing is the industry academia connect. It's not very easy to connect the industry with the academia, because academicians will always fall behind. Do you have any practical solution for that, if I may ask you?
Again, I most probably will be controversial, but I'm 60 years of age, Nitin. So if I can't be controversial when I'm 60 years of age, then there's a problem, isn't there?
Absolutely.
So I think all tenureship for academics should be only on the basis of they participate in at least 1 year's, actual work occupation in every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
in
get
the industry.
all these.
In the industry.
Yeah. So within every 5 years of employment in the academic institutions, they have to serve one of those 5 years doing a job.
in the academic industry.
Second, and then secondly, let's get as many people from the world of business to get their employers to release them for 1 year so that they can work in industry.
I think that could be, Mr. David, that is possible. Getting people from industry into the academics is possible, but making academic person to go to industry may not be easy.
It won't be easy because they won't want to do it.
Yeah, well, they're not equipped to do that.
Well, we shouldn't have people training people for the world of work who are not current with the world of work. Otherwise, we have people training people within an academic model of what they think work is all about, having never sat in an office and met a deadline and been driven by a budget. And we had a large program in India, which was terribly sad. And I won't name the institution for fear of embarrassing them, but we had a large program in India where we took university graduates and we had to train them for 3 months about how to work in a work environment, having completed their university degree. This is crazy. They spent 4 years gaining a university degree. And then, when they would turn up for work, they would look at their feet. They wouldn't make eye contact. They didn't know how to shake hands. They had no social skills. They didn't know what team working was. And so these poor families had invested huge amounts of their family's wealth in putting young people on a 4-year training program, only to have them dispersed into the market and still be unemployed. This is a disaster. It's not fair on the families. It's not fair on the young people. And it's not fair on the employers who need those people with skills. So we've got to get a vocational element into the academic skills that prepares people for the world of work. You, Nitin, will have seen it many times. You have a very bright graduate who turns up for work, and it is almost as though they are a leper in the workforce, because everybody knows that they're very bright, but they haven't got a clue how to use those skills in the workforce. That's not fair on the individual. It's not fair on the co-workers. It's not fair on the family that's invested for them. It's not fair for the employer. Now, why don't the academics want to go into industry, Nitin? What the only reason they don't want to go into industry is because they fear they won't be able to cope.
No, they are not. First of all, they are not trained. They are not educated to go into industry, so they will always hesitate to go into industry.
If I said that I wanted to take your son or daughter and I wanted to take them to a law school, but the people who were going to train them in law were fantastic at resolving arthritis, you would think, well, I want my daughter to go to a law school to be taught law. Yes, but these professors, they're very good at teaching people about arthritis. And they're very good about ingrown toenails. And they've also got a fantastic solution they're working on for migraines. You say, hang on, this is misaligned. I want my daughter to be able to walk into a courtroom and be a barrister or be a lawyer or be an advocate and be able to, and for that, she's going to need the skills and knowledge, but she's also going to need the vocational competency.
Yes.
In the UK, we learned a lesson. We used to train dentists on the academic route.
Mm-hmm.
We used to make them pass exams and written exams, whatever. And then, of course, people would go in to have a root canal and find out that the dentist was academically brilliant, but they would come out with these huge abscesses on their mouth. We want our dentists to be academically brilliant, but we also want them to be vocationally competent.
Absolutely.
You must know many barristers who are very bright, very advocates, but when they go to the bar and they go to the courtroom, they are made mincemeat out of somebody who perhaps isn't as well academically trained, but vocationally is much more competent and capable.
No, see, I'll tell you, also it has its own challenges. Whilst it is very easy for us to say that why don't, within 5 years, 1 year from an industry must go spend in academics. But, say, take an example of a legal profession or a medical profession. For someone to expect to leave his profession for 1 year and go into academics, he will be out of the practice. He will be out of the business. It's a difficult call.
It's a difficult call, but the option is we just leave it. We leave money being wasted, governments being criticised, employers being frustrated, and young people being abused. We could just leave it as it is.
No, I think
Do you have a better solution?
no, there is a,
What's your solution?
but this solution is a wonderful solution. I fully appreciate and I really agree with you that more than the ideally academics should go to industry also, but this can be done on a part-time basis to begin with. So at least nobody is disturbed in their own way. But there has to be a serious commitment to this, to my mind, and it's a very valid solution. See, we have, I have really, I have recently started the National Education 2020 summit to get the universities together to have a debate on a new education policy, and I'm going to make this solution, make this suggestion to them that why don't we recommend in some industry 1 year of the industry to work in the academic and academics to work industry. This is a very good suggestion, Mr. Newey, and I'm going
here's a suggestion. Okay, here's a suggestion. What we could say is to employers, if you release X number of your senior staff, you get first pick at the graduates. Yes. And here's the second solution. We'll pay academics who are academics this much, and academics with industry knowledge this much.
Yes. That's also a good suggestion, very practical solution. That is workable. Okay. Now coming to your skills agenda, do you feel it has not been resolved? Any skill agenda not resolved?
Red tape. But I think this isn't an Indian skills problem. I think this is an Indian problem. But the more red tape and the more you conflusticate the system, the slower it will go. You know this. We know this is a truth.
Yeah.
And in the UK, we've had to go to what we call black box. And what we mean by that is that instead of government applying all this rules and regulation, we have to say for the inputs, what we do is we say, we won't pay for any of the inputs. I go back to my previous answer. We'll just pay for the output. When this person has been in employment, in a skilled occupation, utilizing the certificate that they've got, you'll receive a much bigger bonus payment. And so therefore, within the black box, there are no regulations. So no timesheets, no paperwork. Just once they go into that black box, then the responsibility of the training provider. When they come out of the black box with the qualification and the job for 12 months, will make the payment. The next thing is employer engagement. I think we've got to continually work on employer engagement, not just from the parties and the Tatas and the large companies, but in India, we didn't really manage to get the mid-range employers involved. Those people employing 50, 60, 100 people. The corporates came on board. They were fantastic. But the mid-range, we didn't really sort that. And finally, I think the use of digital technology gives us an opportunity to not sheep dip people, but to inspire and engage with young people so that they find ways of using digital technology to gain the skills that they need. And there's so many innovations in that area.
Right. In fact, I must say that, your point on red tape is very valid, but I must say that, look, very recently, the government of India has announced a new education policy, and it does give a lot of freedom to the universities and institutions to evolve their own curriculum, evolve their own programs, and there is no red tape in that. So I guess a lot of things that you mentioned will be addressed under the new education policy. I hope so.
I suspect, Nitin, though, is that the policy will be fantastic. The political will behind it will be wonderful. The announcement of it will be great. But then you're going to end up with 5,000 civil servants somewhere who will want to count the beans and the full stops and the capital letters and the crossing of the T's. And that's when the process slows down. We were awarded a contract in India, and it took 2 years of an administrative process before we could actually start the work on that contract.
You're right. Hopefully, things. See, honestly, what you're saying is right. Bureaucracy has its own pace. It has own issues. But those are getting addressed. Of course, the speed is. I don't want to discount what you're saying, but the speed is slow. What you're saying is right. But let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst. How do you see India-UK business developing, and what could be done really to develop the India-UK business?
So we have a great history of working together, the UK and India. There's 1.9 million people who live as permanent residents in the UK who are of Indian heritage, and
Mm-hmm.
they bring great value. The most favourite food in the UK is curry. You've taken over our tables and our palates and our every meal. We really value and appreciate working alongside Indian counterparts in the UK. And I think that once we've got Brexit out of the way, and once we understand what the new post-COVID world looks like, I believe there's lots of opportunities for us to come together and collaborate in ways which will really turn people's heads. There's great creativity and great innovation and great skills in India. And I must say, and I'm embarrassed that I haven't said this before during this interview, Nitin, but on every visit that I made, of all those 250 visits I made to India, I always learned something from India. There's always something I learned that I was able to take back to my business in the UK or one of the other countries where I operate in the world. So we have so much as English people, British people, to learn from you in India. And if we put those two parts together, I think we can do some really exciting stuff in the future.
That's a very humbling, experience, and that's really great of you, Mr. Newey, to say that. Okay, I would like to, go now, Mr. Newey, to your book, Ready, Get Set, Grow. Could you talk about your book? Because I'm really curious to understand more about the book.
Okay, so I spent 40 years growing my own business, and I grew it at an accelerated rate. So I went from £3 million a year to £180 million a year, and we opened it in 15 countries around the world. And we went from 65 staff to 5,000 staff. And then I was able to sell that business in 2015. And what I realized is that there's a way of doing it. There's a simple system that can be developed by all businesses to accelerate the growth of their companies. And so I then experimented with it by sitting on the boards of over 100 companies to see whether or not we could apply that system to them and it would accelerate their growth. And I'm delighted to say that the system works. It's not clever. It's very simple. It's very basic. And essentially, there's 4 constituent parts. The first thing that a business has to do is to defend the core of what you do.
Yes.
Before we go off and do anything great or wonderful, we have to look after the goose that's laying the golden egg. And that means wonderful customer service, great pricing, fantastic products, innovation, creativity, looking after the staff, looking after the business premises, make sure your USPs are still unique and haven't become, old-fashioned. And once we've done that part, that's stage 1. Once we've defended the core, we've got that humping really, really well, then we can go to stage 2, which is looking for those adjacent markets which are close to the core, don't require an awful lot of capital expenditure, don't require an awful lot of additional risk, but allow the business to grow into some adjacent marketplaces, taking them to the new services to existing customers. Or once we've done that stage, we've got a little bit more money. And once we've got a little bit more money, because we've still got this pumping away, we've got the extra profit from the adjacent markets. Now we can throw this at some big, hairy, audacious goals. Let's go and do some crazy stuff. Let's go and have a camel farm in Outer Mongolia. Let's go and do some crazy stuff. And once we've done that, and some of them have failed and some of them have succeeded, then stage 4 is we recalibrate it all back together into a new core and we start the process again. Now that sounds really simple, Nitin, but let me just give you one example of where it goes wrong. You have the core business and the business owners lose heart and the business isn't doing quite as well as they wanted it to do. And they get bored, they get fed up and they get fraught and they get anxious because they can't sort it out. So they have missed this step and they go and chuck some money at a daft idea, which they've got no competence in and no idea how to do. And then they lose the family silver. And then they crawl back to the existing business, which because it's been ignored and because of the distraction this has caused, it's fallen into a greater sense of disrepair. And now we've got no core, the goose isn't laying the golden egg anymore, the BHAG didn't work, and now we've got misery everywhere. So, number 1, defend the core. Number 2, look for adjacent markets. Number 3, then go for the BHAGs. And number 4, bring it all back together and start the process again. And so that's the book, Ready, Set, Grow. And you, Nitin, will be delighted to know it's available on Amazon.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So there you go.
Great. Mr. Newey, you have really done a wonderful work for India, whether it is India UK business development or whether the Skills India skill development programs through the Commonwealth agendas. I honestly, once again, let me sincerely thank you for the same and your personal commitment.
It's my pleasure.
Uh,
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. And also, having spent your valuable time on the India Power Talk, you're really given really serious commitment on this. Before I really close, what would be your message to India?
So here's my message. Incredible India, I believe, is an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I think of India, my head just says, wow. I mean, you are a fantastic group of people. You've got fantastic opportunities in front of you and so much power and energy and an ability to solve not just your problems, but to be part of solving the world's problems. And therefore, my final thoughts are, what really makes me feel great about India? It's the people. It's your commitment to family, your industriousness, your sense of endeavor, and the skills and education can fire all of that so that you move forward with tremendous success. And I really wish India the most wonderful future, as long as we keep investing in the young people.
You're absolutely right. You're bang on point, Mr. Newey, and I really thank you for that. Mr. Newey, thank you very much for your valuable time, insights, and experience. It was a pleasure talking to you. I would like to thank the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, Lifelong Learning and Education of the University of Mumbai, the Indian Chamber of Commerce, LawSICO, and the India SME Accelerator Network. Let me conclude my vote of thanks with an humble prayer to the Almighty to bestow mankind with the right spirit to fight coronavirus and help restore peace, prosperity, and bliss.